Live from the SABC's Auckland Park headquarters, welcome to this week's penultimate edition of the Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo, and on the show tonight,
President Ramaphosa is clear that there is no basis for the claims of criminal conduct that have been made against him in Mr. Fraser's statement.
President Cyril Ramaphosa responds to former intelligence chief Arthur Fraser's allegations. We look at how this could possibly pan out, both in terms of the law and in the public relations space.
Part of the standoff, which is causing problems in Nelson Mandela Metro, as an example, is the fact that you do have two municipal, or it is alleged that there's two municipal managers.
As Water Affairs Minister Senzo Mchunu descends on Nelson Mandela Bay to see what could be done to avoid day zero, we look at that standoff that's causing Treasury not to be so keen to release much-needed funds, as well as the political chaos behind Treasury's reluctance. All that and more coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. President Cyril Ramaphosa has dismissed claims of criminal conduct made against him by former State Security Director General Arthur Fraser. Ramaphosa says Fraser's accusations have no basis. Fraser yesterday laid criminal charges against Ramaphosa at the Rosebank police station here in Johannesburg. The former State Security Director General says the charges emanate from a robbery of over $4 million US. That's more than 60 million rands. In February 2020 at the president's Palapala farm in Waterberg in the province of Limpopo.
The presidency has confirmed that a robbery took place around the 9th February 2020 at the president's Limpopo farm. At the time, the president was attending the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa. President Ramaphosa has rejected Fraser's allegations and says there is no basis for his claims. Fraser alleges that the president was involved in defeating the ends of justice and concealing the crime from the police. But the president has rubbished Fraser's version of events, saying the matter was reported to the head of the Presidential Protection Unit of the South African Police Service for investigations.
President Ramaphosa is clear that there is no basis for the claims of criminal conduct that have been made against him in Mr. Fraser's statement. The presidency can confirm that a robbery took place at the president's farm in Limpopo on or around the 9th of February 2020, in which proceeds from the sale of game were stolen. The president was attending an African Union summit in Addis Ababa at the time of the incident. On being advised of the robbery, President Ramaphosa reported the incident to the head of the Presidential Protection Unit of the South African Police Service for investigation.
In a statement, Fraser says there's supporting evidence contained in a case he filed at the Rosebank police station, which includes photographs, bank accounts, video footage, and names.
The president stands ready to cooperate with any law enforcement investigation of these matters. President Ramaphosa remains resolute in leading the fight against corruption, restoring the integrity and capability of public institutions, and overcoming the legacy of state capture, and will not be deterred by disinformation campaigns.
Meanwhile, political analyst Levi Ndo says in such incidents, actions have a motive.
The unfortunate situation is that we have the president of the state who has been reported to the police, and this people would see this and associate it with politics. And of course, if you look at the background of Arthur Fraser and what Arthur Fraser has been doing in the past, one would not divorce this from the politics in the ANC and nationally. And the only motivation that one would observe is that it appears as if Arthur has a score to settle.
For now, it will be a waiting game for many South Africans to see if the allegations made by Fraser holds any water. Nhlanhla Khatlani, SABC News, Johannesburg.
To help us make sense of these developments in their second day now, I am joined. My first guest is Nthabiseng Dubazana, who is a lawyer. She's a director at Dubazana Attorneys, a regular on the program. Nthabiseng, good evening. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Vodio.
Well, of course, there's a great deal of interest here for various reasons. First of all, it's the head of state, up against a former intelligence chief. When such people are involved, there's a great deal of speculation, innuendo, all manner of things. But unfortunately, we don't have the luxury or opportunity of an affidavit maybe, or anything beyond what Arthur Fraser, as lawyers, whoever they sent it to, this thing circulated yesterday like wildfire. But suffice to say that he has said what Nhlanhla Khatlani said in that piece. For a case of this nature, what test must it go through for it to even make it to a court roll?
So as the matter has now been put into the SAPS desk or onto the SAPS's desk, the task of the SABC now is to delve into the investigations that are now attached to the affidavits, the pictures, the bank statements, and all of those things that Arthur Fraser has put out. And then once they've gathered their own intel, then they will have to now put it to the desk of the NDPP, who will then decide if there's even a prima facie case based on the evidence before them to even proceed in charging Ndate Ramaphosa in this instance. So at this stage, it's a matter of waiting to hear if the state will even consider that there's sufficient enough evidence to even put the charge. Even if a charge is put, it's still more investigations that still have to be done. The number of things that have been leveled against Ndate Ramaphosa, that he's concealing a crime, I beg your pardon, and also he has kidnapped the people who actually did the robbery in February 2020 on his farm. All those things, they still need to be investigated. Those people that were kidnapped and also who were the alleged robbers or housebreakers on the day in question will have to be found. Mm-hmm. That is going to be a mammoth task in its own if these people indeed existed. And if Ndate Ramaphosa's counter-claim to Ndate Fraser's allegations that indeed this matter was reported to the security, the head part of the SAP presidency, I beg your pardon, then it would mean that at this stage, I don't know what's happening on my screen. I don't know if you can still see me.
Yes, we can still see you. We can still hear you. There are some problems, but go ahead, continue. Yeah.
Okay, so now if Ndate Ramaphosa did indeed report the matter to the head unit in the SAPS that deals with the presidency, then at minimum there should be a case number that is affiliated with the robbery that happened at the farm. Mm-hmm. So that way, I would have assumed that in responding to this allegation, unless of course the investigations are not yet concluded and the case is not ready to be put out there, I would have assumed that Ndate Ramaphosa, in responding to these allegations, would have at least put the case number there that says that this is the proof that I have.
We aren't going to go to a bit into his own statements, but before we do that, if you allow me, I just want us to stay for a little bit, for a minute or so, with Arthur Fraser's first. And I want to go back to, the charges, you mentioned, which include defeating the ends of justice, kidnapping of suspects, bribery, concealing a crime. Those are serious allegations, irrespective of who may have committed them.
That much is true. And also looking at the quantum, the amount of money that is considered to have been stolen, like you said, it's over 60 million rand when we convert it from dollars to rands. That in itself puts this matter in the high court realm. So once the matter is ripe and ready for charging and for trial, it will be heard in the high court. So if indeed all these allegations can be proven with the evidence that Dr. Fraser has put before the SAPS, then we are looking at multiple charges will be leveled, I beg your pardon, that will be leveled against the president. And then he will then have to of course, go through the normal process, I hope, of a person who will be a normal accused person, who will then go through the process of bail application and all of those and appearing in court while the matter gets postponed, etc. But for now, I think it's just a waiting game to see just how much weight these allegations have.
Now, at the end of his statement, Arthur Fraser says he trusts that the police and the prosecuting authorities will investigate the matter without fear or a favor. And you did say right at the beginning that, of course, there would have to be an investigation, and the National Prosecuting Authority afterwards would then have to make up their minds as to whether the president does indeed have a case to answer or put this on a court, this up for prosecution.
Yes, that is definitely true. So for now, like I said, you just have to wait and see just how far into the investigations that the SAPS has to delve in, and then that will determine whether or not the NPA will then decide to put the matter on the roll. But with like we've mentioned already, the level and the number of charges leveled against the president, the investigations won't take, I don't think we're looking at this charge coming forth between the next 3 months, 6 months or so. We're looking at bank statements, we're looking at money trails, we're looking at people who were kidnapped, eyewitnesses. It's quite a long list of investigations that's going to be delved in. So I do not foresee there being any charge leveled, I think, within the next 3 to 6 months at most, at minimum, I mean to say. So yeah, it's just a matter of seeing, now, where do we go after this?
And interesting, that very last line, Arthur Fraser's last line, which says, "I trust that the president will take the nation into his confidence and accept or deny that the events I describe in my affidavit occurred on his property." Now, the president has given us his version of events via a statement that the presidency released today. But before I get to that, his a statement, just one point on the back of what you said right at the end of your previous input. Given, as you say, that there are so many things that would need to be proven, very thorough investigations, many people to contact and get them to come forward, collating the evidence and so on. Does it matter? Does it matter? And I'm not dragging you into politics here because you're focusing solely on legal matters. But does it matter if there is, let's say, public outcry about, let's say someone gets up and says, state law enforcement agencies are dragging their feet on this one because it involves the president. And I'm saying this because whoever feels Cyril Ramaphosa would need to be prosecuted is going to say things along those lines in an effort, obviously, to put pressure on whoever, has the power and the authority to take the decision. But in law, does that matter? And from what we know or have experienced, have we seen instances where, because of public pressure, then the case would, say, move much faster than it would ordinarily do?
I would say yes and no, but in our justice system, the interests of justice and that of the public are taken. But when we use the term interest of justice, basically, we are basically talking about the society and the public and their outcries that come within it. So when an accused person is sentenced, we look at their personal circumstances, the interest of justice, and what the prevalence of the crime within the community. So that is what the court usually looks at when they give a sentence or find the accused person to be guilty. Now, having said that, for the process of investigations to be made expediently, I don't know if that would be a situation where the public would influence it per se, because the number of things that have to be dealt with in any normal case, let's exclude this one for a second. If there are cases whereby we need to delve into bank statements and find certain witnesses, some may be dead, etc., etc., the investigations do take quite some time, and then there might possibly be a task force that will be appointed to deal with different sections of this particular crime. So therefore, I don't think the public is having an outcry that because it is the president, he's being favored in some manner or form, would force them to expedite the investigations. Just now they mess it up, and then when it comes to the actual trial and things like cross-examination, then we find that the chain evidence is broken and we cannot find the president guilty if indeed he was guilty. So rather take it as long as is necessary to gather as much information and evidence as possible, so that when they do put it onto the court roll, there is no possibility of there being at the end of it an application for 174, for example. So yeah, I think it will be a balancing act for the NPA. It won't just be a given that we need to make things fast because of the person that is being accused in this matter. Okay,
the presidency has, of course, taken the nation into confidence, one would assume, by this response that his office sent out today, insisting there's no basis for the claims of criminal conduct that have been made against him. But he then goes on to say, or the statement at least, says the presidency can confirm that a robbery took place at the president's farm in Limpopo on or around the 9th of February 2020, in which proceeds from the sale of game were stolen. Just up to that point, does it anything that sort of triggered anything from where you sit?
It just gives us an indication that there's common cause between the two sides of the story. There is common cause that there was an incident that happened on the farm. It is common cause that there was a robbery that happened. It is common cause that money was taken, or certain amounts of money was taken. So already as it is, it gives some kind of weight to Ndete Fraser's story, in that he is not picking on a tree leaf somewhere. On the story, there's something there that can be substantiated by virtue of that statement. So looking at that, it can be, okay, fine, if we are agreeing to this stage, how far more would come the investigations as the matter goes forward. Okay, now the line below that then says the president was at the AU summit in Addis at the time the incident occurred. And then on being advised of the robbery, the President Ramaphosa then reported the incident to the head of the Presidential Protection Unit of the South African Police Service for investigation. On track, not on track? If he was out of the country, my question would then be, did he make the call personally to report the matter? And how would that be because he was not present? He was not an eyewitness to the crime. Or was it a matter of that I am out of the country and I'm informing the SAPS unit that deals the presidency, and then asking them to then go to my residence or to my farm to go see what is happening, go conduct investigations? That would be, at least we don't have lots to work on.
Yes. No. That's, beyond the statement, we indeed don't, And then,
so we can think that.
Okay, but reporting the incident to the head of the Presidential Protection Unit is not in itself wrong or untoward, unusual, as some people have started speculating.
No. I think it was probably the best thing to do. A crime happened in your residence. You did the right thing. You called the authorities to come and deal with it. I think I feel like they're pulling at straws at this stage, because we don't know exactly what went down. We just have to now wait to see that with this counter claim or statement rather that has come out, would it be that reporting was actually done, and if so, was a case number then open to investigate a charge of housebreaking and theft, and then see how far the investigations in that are? That will then blow out the Fraser's criminal matter that he opened out the window, because there would have been proof that this docket now has existed for quite some time. It's just that the matter is not in court as yet.
Okay, and that's where we are going to leave it for now. Thank you very much, Ntabiseng, for your time. Ntabiseng Tubazana was the director at Tubazana Attorney, just clearing the legal, issues or path that this case would have to take if indeed it proceeds. I felt it was important to clear these matters of law, while of course people are making up their minds about, what did go down, what didn't, who may have had a case to answer, or why this is happening and why now. We tried to answer some of those questions yesterday, and we continue to do so. Now, for a spectacle that's definitely going to play itself out in the open, what are the first salvos we've seen via, of course, these two statements? What are these, telling us, and how is this possibly going to play itself out there, in the open, where often there aren't any rules, really, especially on social media platforms? Lorato Ntsegeng is a reputation management specialist. He's the CEO of Decode Communications. Evening, Lorato. Thanks very much for your time.
Good evening, Guyo, and good evening to your viewers.
Right. Just from looking at these two statements, let's start again with the Fraser one. Your thoughts as you read through all of that, and how it was sent out.
The first thing, it was one. It has become a commonplace that when relatively high-profile people go and lay a charge with the South African Police Services, they tend to make it, of a public spectacle of some sort. You'd remember when Fikile Mbalula was laying a charge against personality Somizi Mhlongo. The Congress of the People is one of those that do that. So that was the first thing. I was not surprised, right? Because it's almost something that has become part of our discourse. But what was curious was, of course, then when I was going into the detail to say, so if you are a Fraser, you're Arthur Fraser, right, and you have something as important as this to report to the police, right, and you are not saying that I reported it to the police back in 2020 when the alleged case was said to have happened. I, waited at least about, almost 2 years to only report the matter now. It raised, that was the first question that it raised. And of course, understanding that, or at least, with the knowledge that the ANC elective conference will be sitting in December. That opens it to even bigger speculation. But thirdly, was around how it sounded like the way the statement was written, it was exceptionally meticulous, although with many information gaps, but it was as if it was a dare to the president.
I want us to go there, where you are right now, but before we do that, can I take you back a step or two? When you were saying that, people do that these days, they even invite us as in the media, to, they take us along to say, come, watch me, lay a statement and so on. But why do people do that? What are they trying to achieve?
I guess one of the things that has been troublesome, Vuyo, has been that the South African police service's ineptitude in many instances has not helped, right? So when you have a, perceived inept police service, you then want to use the media or at least publicity to then put them under pressure. Because then you know that if you were to just report it, quietly, the likelihood is that they will give you, they will take you through the normal process. You'll get a case number, there'll be an investigating officer who updates you as and when, if they do right. But when there's some spotlight from the media, the likelihood is that even when an Arthur Fraser does not raise a question, as part of the follow-up, the newsroom, the editor may actually say, oh, by the way, what has happened to that case? And then make a call to Rosebank Police Station. And then, whether there's an update or not, they may then update the story. That's one of the things that I suspect gets many of them to try and do that, really just putting pressure on the South African police services. But of course, other people, Minister Fikile Mbalula, he's somebody who we know that he loves publicity. He loves being out there. So when he does it, we know that it's beyond the first reason that I'm raising around the perceived or the real issue around ineptitude of the South African police services.
Now let's come then to the statement itself. You were saying that from your reading of it, it does kind of tick a few boxes.
Yeah. Yes. And perhaps even before I get to those boxes, I think that one of the things that has become very interesting at this time is that, remember the Bosasa saga with Mmusi Maimane and the president in parliament, right? And it is now going to be very curious on how the president deal with such matters, where he knows that he has to respond with a lot of caution, or at least he must be quite circumspect when he responds. So unlike before November 2018, there would not have been an issue, right? Because there would not have been any claims that the president may have misled Parliament. Of course, the Constitutional Court cleared him when the public protector had been taking him to court. So that's the first factor, really, right? Where the dare from Arthur Fraser it put the president and the presidency in a corner where it was about, I have this information, or at least he claims that he has information, and will the president respond? If yes, how will he respond? Because I suspect that there's a likelihood of, over and above just reporting the matter to SABC, there may be a different tactic that may be taken. And again, I'm just speculating on this one.
Now, he has responded. One, no basis for the claims that Arthur Fraser is making. Two, yes, the incident did indeed take place. But hey, that's about it, really. Does he tick any of your boxes?
And unfortunately, or maybe let me say yes and no. The yes part is, I suspect the communications fraternity is really sympathizing and empathizing with Vincent. He's literally second day into his job, and he has to deal with a crisis of this magnitude, right? But it comes with a job, I guess. The first box that it ticks is that he showed rapid response, or at least the ability to quickly respond to something that impacts or affects the office and the credibility of the presidency and that of the president, right? If you think about, a few months ago or any other time when we did not have a permanent spokesperson in the presidency, whenever there would be any such claims, right, we would literally sit for days on end without knowing whether the president is breathing, he's saying anything on it. Instead, we'd see calendar, photo ops of him here, there, and everywhere else, right? So this is a good thing that you have a senior and seasoned or communicator who then says we are not going to allow speculation to go rife as far as the issues are concerned in the media. So that's a good one. That's a good one on Vincent's side. The second one then relates to the earlier issue that I was raising, that the fancy footwork that Vincent has to play is that, unfortunately, like all communicators, we then depend on people to share information so that you are able to communicate, right? And unfortunately, in cases like this, you can't communicate with absolutes, right? And that is why they were somewhat careful in saying there are no bases. If you consider that the claim from Arthur Fraser is that there was kidnapping, and the statements from the presidency says nothing about that. It may be very clever from the presidency side to say, don't deal with anything else except what is known, but also acknowledge that there is a system or a process that ought to, deal and process this, which to a great extent then separates the president from how the matter ought to be dealt with. Because if you think about it, it is not the president's his person to be following up with the presidential protection unit head, right? Instead, it's the other way around, and therefore the president may get away with the excuse that, listen, I had not received any feedback from the presidential protection unit head. Therefore, I suspect or I believe that the matter it was not concluded. And is the statement being able to achieve that to some extent?
There are people who think that maybe he should have issued a rather terse statement that just says, oh, well, yes, this incident happened, but the matter is with the police.
It may have been possibly a good tactic, right? However, it is also possible that the president knows, or at least the detail of it, he knows that should it come out, a test statement would not suffice, right? And therefore, leaving it to, or at least, and that is why the point around, the last paragraph that talks about the presidency will not be deterred
by disinformation campaigns.
Yes, right. And literally just creating it as if, one, this is a disinformation campaign, but also we know that it may be playing into the issues around we are dealing with corruption and state capture issues, and therefore some people may want to distract us, and we are on that. And does it achieve the kind of public perception that the presidency wants to strengthen from a messaging point of view? To an extent, are South Africans convinced, though? That's a completely different matter.
Remember, there was the incident of his son, where he gave, even then, a lot of people felt he perhaps gave a lot more information than he should have given. And that was something that came back to bite him.
So, I guess perhaps the advantage here may also be that I think that the statement is relatively carefully written, Vuyo, and that's what I'm saying. The fact that they decided only to deal with the matter that the matter is sitting with, or at least they acknowledged, but did not go into detail, right? That is good enough just to say, to be able to say, we are not going to entertain any sort of response or even being part of the matter going forth. But then, of course, then outline one or two other messages that are important in this case, which are not necessarily directly related to the case, but more to the messaging from the presidency. So even in this case, I don't think that they really gave a lot more than they ought to have. Are there gaps in the statement? Of course. Because, the question, if you consider that Arthur Fraser gave us a definite amount, right, or at least, there about $4 million US, right? Did the presidency acknowledge that? No. Was it important for them to do that? I don't think so. That's the kind of detail that it is important for them to not even entertain at this point.
In fact, that then brings me to my next question, because remember, I mean, the two statements are all we have to work on, and the fact that the police now would have to continue their investigations, and then NPA would have to come in, and then the courts would come in, and so on. South Africans are not going to wait for that. I mean, that's not the end of where things are. It's not the end of the conversation for now. In fact, until the case comes before court, if it does, eventually. What do you believe that from the two statements, someone who needed clarity on anything, or who needed to be persuaded of the correctness of either one of these parties, have enough to work on? Or do you think people are going to just continue with their conversations, irrespective of what may be in here? Perhaps because many people would have taken positions on who to side with even before any of these parties was to reveal more information.
Unfortunately, South Africans are a nation of, we are on the polar ends, right? So if there's an issue, whether it's something as simple as and I know that simple may be oversimplifying it, but if you think about the Somizi Mhlongo and the Mohale divorce, right? The sentiment on social media, you see people on two polar ends, and I'm using this example just to demonstrate that there's always a sense of people picking sides, and even in this case, it does not matter what Arthur Fraser says to those, or how much more he reveals. Should the president not do anything, or even if there was some bigger revelation by midnight tonight, right? Those who believe that Cyril Ramaphosa is a victim of misinformation, they will not change their minds. And conversely, those that believe that Cyril Ramaphosa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, is not truthful, he ought not to be believed, they doubt his credibility. It does not matter whether there'll be information from the presidency or even if it's a private entity, demonstrating that indeed the president was not wrong, or even the court itself. Those who doubt him and don't believe in him are going to really stay on their ends. But what is important for the presidency in particular will always be not leave too many information gaps, right? Because they then play into the speculation game where the media, unfortunately, yourselves will always have to be asking the hard questions. And in the absence of hard questions, you are going to be inviting people like myself and many other, like you're speaking to Ntabiseng, who literally can just give you, saying, under normal circumstances, but we know that we are dealing with a specific case, and with no information or little information, unfortunately, it will just be a wildfire of speculation.
Very, very quickly, to people who may find themselves in situations like these, as a reputation management specialist, one, two, maybe three quick things that they need to think about before they issue statements, whatever their intention may be?
If the relationship is not broken completely, Vuyo, reach out to the person because public spats never end well, right? Particularly because now we live in the age of the internet, and anything that is then said either in anger or even somebody releasing information, it will stay there on the internet. Because even if they were to apologize later to say, I'm sorry, it was unintentional or whatever, so avoid allowing it to play out in the public as far as possible. But if the relationship is irreparable, which I suspect it is the case now with the president and Arthur Fraser, right? To a great extent, you need good advice. You need you will need a good lawyer. You'll need a good communications person who and then don't try to be clever, right? Lastly, do not have too many advisors, because a lot of the people who are in these cases, they then listen to many other people around them, and they go and do what people are saying to them instead of listening to the experts around them. So don't try and be clever. Listen to the experts. They will always hold your hand and guide your way to successfully at least mitigate against the reputational risk that may come with this situation.
Okay, and that's why we're going to leave a special thanks to you, Lorato Nchekeng, who is, of course, a reputation management specialist, but also the CEO of Decode Communications. After the break, we talk about Nelson Mandela Bay. The metro is facing day zero, but from what the Deputy Finance Minister and the Treasury team told Parliament yesterday, they are not going to release any money to help there because there are problems. So we're going to get to the bottom of those problems that may just deprive the people on the ground of help that they desperately need. Don't go away. Water Affairs and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu, together with his deputies David Mashobo and Digele Dimagadzi, have descended, or will be descending, I should say, on Nelson Mandela tomorrow, where the 1.2 million population is facing day zero. But from what the Deputy Finance Minister, David Masondo, and Treasury officials told Parliament yesterday, it looks unlikely that the municipality will get the much-needed financial assistance at this stage.
And part of the standoff, which is causing problems in Nelson Mandela Metro, as an example, is the fact that you do have two municipal, or it is alleged that there's two municipal managers, and we're looking at that situation as National Treasurer, and we said we may have to consider withholding, because that's the leverage that we have, that we cannot continue to transfer the taxpayers' money into such entities when we can see that there's misgovernance.
Okay, I don't know what happened to that part, but you got the gist of it. The Deputy Finance Minister talking to Parliament's Appropriations Committee yesterday, trying to explain that problem. What it basically means is that even if National Treasury was to give a grant, conditional or otherwise, to that municipality to help alleviate the situation going on there, they can't do so because it would be reckless and irresponsible to give money where there is no one to account for it. That's what it simply means. Well, what's going on then in Mandela Bay that's so big that the people of that country, of that part of our country, I should say, can't get much needed assistance? Well, outspoken long-time activist Mkhuseli Jack is a member of the mayoral committee there responsible for economic development in that part of our country. He joins us now on the line. Mr. Jack, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. When I heard the Deputy Minister saying that, I said, oh no, because for a while, I think a lot of people have been assuming that the chaos going on there, politically won't have the kind of repercussions we are seeing, or what may just happen now, where money that's intended for a very good and important cause, we're talking about water here, which is life essentially, is not going to go there if Treasury is not convinced that someone is going to account for it. You're not surprised, are you?
No, I think that is perfectly correct for the minister to take this matter very seriously, of how state money will be used and by who. And of course, obviously, he is concerned, correctly so, about the ongoing saga in Nelson Mandela Bay, where you have two accounting officers occupying the same position. And fortunately, the urgency of the situation and the counseling from the minister has propelled all the councillors to come together today. We are all here at Further Market Hall, funny enough, since 2 o'clock, and we are still deliberating on the matters, because we definitely are going to make sure that we comply with all the necessary regulation and requirements.
Now, why was this issue left till now? I mean, so late in the day, because this day zero has been coming for a while, or at least from what we've been told. But I understand, council has not been sitting for what, weeks now?
Well, the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, the council has been sitting. The last time we sat was the 23rd of March, and again we sat on around the 26th of April, if I'm not mistaken, where we passed the draft budget, adjusted budget, but ever since, it has been very difficult to sit, because
and even then it was because civil society sort of came together, spoke to all of you, and really got you to at least make sure that a budget is passed. So even those sittings weren't really normal.
Yeah, that one was also funny enough, also pushed by the fact that we were meeting a final deadline relating to that. But we did sit and that budget was passed, decisions were taken. But today we are sitting here, today we are going to take very, very good decisions. The councillors have all come together, and I think to our senses to sit and do what needs to be done. And that's why we are still here today. And I can assure you by tomorrow, all the things that the minister wants will be done.
What makes you say so?
It is because we have had a long meeting today of deliberating, and I think we did talk sense to one another, and we are all on the same page, all the councillors across the political divide.
Are things for instance, the ANC's insistence on Dr. Ngwazi to be the city manager, has that deadlock been broken? Because it seemed to be the make or break point.
It was. I think we are resolving that now. I think we will all vote against removing Dr. Ngwazi, and then that I think is going to be carried by the majority of councillors across the political divide. And tomorrow we will have no Dr. Ngwazi, to be honest.
No, as in she'll be gone?
She will be gone. Councillors will do what the judge told us to do. The judge said we must come here and take a decision pertaining to the issue of Dr. Ngwazi.
What would convince the ANC this time around?
Come again?
What would convince the ANC this time around, because they were adamant that she's not going anywhere?
No, we are all on the same page now. We're all of us. I think all the parties, the DA, the EFF, and the ANC, we are all on the same page on the issue now. We have been. It has been terrible past 6 or 8 weeks. It has been the worst weeks of serving in the council here. But I think after that bruising encounters, now we are ready, and I think that everybody now sees that the only way is to come to our senses. And I think I'm grateful that we could persuade each other in this direction.
Mm-hmm. What happens if you don't? God forbid.
If what?
What happens if you don't find one another? Say by the time you get back to the meeting, things would have changed. What would happen then?
After tonight?
Yes.
No, certainly tonight the decision will be taken. Like I'm telling you, we will pass all the items on the agenda, and we will agree on them. And we have already really worked very hard in the last week to resolve these matters.
I know, you are confident, and you've said this over and over again, but I'm asking a rather hypothetical question. That what happens if, for whatever reason, things changed, in the last few minutes, and you're back to square one? What do you think would need to happen?
The consequences are dire. The minister have made himself clear, loud and clear to all of us. The consequences, and I can tell you, all the councillors that are here are terrified of the municipality falling into the hands of either administration by both the province or national. And the main thing that have traumatized the councillors is the knowledge that already the minister has already committed that is going to take the water department and deal with the water themselves and the crisis and everything, and push all the councillors aside. Mm-hmm. And the councillors can see that the foolishness of the quarrels that were happening have drove us to that point and forced the minister to take this kind of drastic and dramatic decision. And we have no choice, hence we came to our senses.
Mm-hmm. Going forward, what do you think needs to happen to make sure that you don't find yourselves in a similar situation ever again?
I think that people just have to stick to openness, and act in a transparent manner, and act in the best interest of the citizens of the metro, rather than for narrow party or personal interest. Because what has driven us to this point was a matter of we were differing on the issue of the appointment of Dr. Nwazi on the numerous other factors. And then we couldn't come to understand that point. And some people were saying, no, Dr. Nwazi or nothing. And that is what caused the stalemate. And now that people realize that, and everyone, we are on the same boat now, I think we have a chance now of moving forward. Because, by the way, that was the only reason, since this coalition government was formed, we never quarreled before over anything. The work was, everybody was allowed to do the work he was doing, and everybody was working on full steam until we reached this hurdle. Once we got that hurdle, everything fell apart. And now, I think that now that we are explaining to each other, we are talking to each other, and now the serious threat of the government being taken over by especially either the province or by national, and I think most of these councillors now, they are very scared of that.
A very weird situation indeed. So-and-so or nothing, but at whose expense? It's something that's happening. It's gained ground all over the country. I mean, in eThekwini recently, where there was a similar situation where there was a deadlock over the appointment of a city manager. Something needs to be done about this, because it's not those officials or their political principals or handlers who are actually suffering. It's the people on the ground. Special thanks to Mkhuseli Jack, who's a member of the mayoral committee in Nelson Mandela Bay, for giving us those insights and for really putting us in the picture there. And that's our show for tonight. To join us again tomorrow night, same time. Have a good night.